Hello and welcome to this episode of the Alignment with Jenn podcast. I am your host, Jenn, and today we're going to be talking about the 6 stages of manifesting a new reality. This is a really special episode because these are things that I've consciously noticed with the thousands of women that I've worked with, but I've never put it into this format before where I've actually explained it in this way. So I'm super excited to share this with you, and I think it's going to give you a lot of clarity on your own manifestation journey and where you might be, and also help you keep going, give you that confidence, give you that hope to recognize what steps you might need to take and not feel defeated when things can get more difficult. So I think you're going to absolutely love this, and you're going to be able to really identify a lot about yourself through this process. The first stage that I want to talk about is essentially the spark. So what happens when we manifest anything is it begins as a seed of thought, right? It starts as this thought, it starts as this idea, and I think of that as a spark that has the potential to light a fire that changes the course of your life. And so this spark is essentially this idea that either you receive or you cultivate to make your life in a new way. It could be the idea of a new relationship. It could be the idea of a new career or a new business. It could be a really creative project that you want to start. But it's essentially something that allows you to go from life used to be a certain way to life would be really amazing and different if I were to manifest this thing. And it feels exciting, it feels good, and it feels new. So it can be an intuitive hit, it can be a conversation with a friend, it can be a circumstance unfolding for you. And typically there's kind of a before and an after, where there's a before it used to be this way and after now it is this way. And an example of this is I was sitting in a Tony Robbins event. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago now, sitting in this event, and I had my supplement business at the time, and I was kind of at a point where I could either keep investing to really grow the business. It had kind of started to do well, so I was at this point where I needed to put more capital into it in order to take it to that next level. Or I could let it go. And Tony Robbins said, and this, I remember just sinking into my gut, and I just felt it so deeply. He said, if you are not passionate about what you're doing, you need to get out of it because you're not going to withstand the test of time. And I was just like, whoa. I knew in that moment I couldn't keep doing that business because it was not my soul's calling. And that was really difficult because I had invested time, money, energy. But there was this insight in this moment. I didn't know what my next step would be, but I knew something had to change. And that's what I mean by the spark. It's this spark of inspiration. It's this spark of change where that flame begins to be lit, this flame of change. And if you allow and you cultivate that flame, your whole life can be different. So there's that moment. So that's the first step. Things that can derail this step. This is when your manifestations are the most fragile. You cannot listen to that spark. You can try to logic it away. You can share it with people too early, and then they'll be like, oh, that's a bad idea, or maybe don't do that, or they'll put their own beliefs and their own thoughts on it. And think of it at this stage as this little baby sapling or a little baby flower that is very, very fragile. The biggest thing that gets in our way at this stage, and this is what I think keeps most people blocked for the longest periods of time and not really creating the lives that they want, is what Tony Robbins calls the tyranny of how. It's being too focused on how you're going to execute it. If in that moment I had started thinking, how am I going to make money another way? What else am I going to do? How is this going to happen? How would I even go about selling my business? What would I even do? I would have probably gotten so overwhelmed, I wouldn't have made any changes, right? So you can't be focused on the how. You have to be focused on cultivating that flame, cultivating that spark. So the second stage is what I call the call. It's essentially where you decide, you know what, I'm going to answer this call. I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to ignite this spark. I am going to start moving in this direction of creating this branch in my reality, this wrinkle in time. And it's the moment of decision of I'm not going to go back to how things were. I'm going to create anew. And this is where a lot of people will start focusing on the actions to take, right? Okay, do I hire help? What kind of business plan do I need, right? Maybe I join a dating app. This is where we decide to start to take action and we start to build a little bit of momentum. Most people will start with action because that's what's visible, right? We are so action obsessed because we're so sight obsessed. We're obsessed with the scene, the world of the scene. But the scene, the physical reality, is only 1%. The energetic reality is 99%. Just look at a visible light spectrum. You'll see that all that we can actually see is a very small sliver of what we know of the spectrum. Something that can happen as you start to take these actions that can derail this stage and that can prevent you from moving forward is being so focused on the actions that don't necessarily work. Because typically when we're creating a new pathway, we aren't going to know exactly how to do it, right? So we'll probably try a number of different things and some of them won't work. Right? It reminds me of the Thomas Edison quote where he talks about inventing the light bulb. And he failed so many times before he achieved success. And the quote that he says is that he says, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that didn't work." Right? Instead of deciding that what didn't work was failure, he decided, okay, awesome. That way doesn't work, so I know not to do that. That way doesn't work. That way doesn't work. And he changed the course of history. So recognizing that when you decide to answer the call, you are going to experience obstacles, and to not let those obstacles be in your mind as failure. Use them as data, right? I consider myself a scientist where I'm just constantly collecting data of what works, what doesn't work, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And so when you decide, okay, I'm no longer going back, you draw that line in the sand, you affect reality. That energy of certainty, that energy of change, you're going to start attracting in what you need to make that change, to manifest that new reality. There will be challenges, and recognizing that those challenges don't mean that this isn't meant for you, that this isn't possible for you. All it means is that you need to keep going. You need to try a new angle. You need to learn more. You need to experience a new version of the way that things can be. And stage number 3, and I personally believe that this is the stage that causes the most issues for people, is what I call the clearing. This is something I've seen in so many clients, and that's why I named it the clearing, because I see it so often. And essentially it's this idea that when you say, okay, I want this new relationship that is a higher caliber relationship, just as an example, we have to clear out the things that cause you to attract lower caliber relationships in the past. So that could be patterns that you have. That could be people in your life, right? Maybe you have a friend that you're always texting and flirting with, even though you have no intentions of dating that person. That's somebody that you're going to have to let go in order to create this new reality that you want, because that creates fractured energy, right? It could be the limiting beliefs, the fears. If you get really triggered in relationship and you're constantly triggered at your partner, that's not going to create a high caliber relationship. So those are patterns within you that have to change. And so the clearing can be difficult for a lot of people because it can look like everything crumbling or bad things happening. But the way to actually look at it is to recognize what is being cleared out is what you no longer need. And what is left is creating space for you to receive what you want, right? If you have a 1-car garage and you decide you want to get a new car, and you want to get a really nice car, typically you've got to get rid of that first car in order to make space for the new car. That's the same thing that is happening when you experience the clearing, when things in your life start to be cleared out. So you might become much more aware of your own triggers, of your own patterns, of your own limited ways of thinking, because the universe is preparing you to hold more. It's expanding your vessel, your capacity to create that next level. This stage is where so many people can get really tripped up. And this stage is followed by, and these two kind of can happen in the same time, the rebuilding. This is where you will start to rebuild a new identity, a new version of you who can actually hold that new reality. Because if you want to build a new business and you've never built a business before, you're going to have to learn things. You're going to have to become a new person. Business is a spiritual game. Relationships are a spiritual game. Life is a spiritual game. And so you'll have to become more in order to hold that. And that's what the rebuilding is about. It's about we clear out those old patterns, those old habits, those old ways of being, those old relationships that aren't serving us, the circumstances that aren't serving us. This can look like losing a job. If you can stay in that loss of a job and recognize that there's something amazing coming for you, you're going to experience so much more positivity in your life, and that new job will manifest faster. As that clearing happens, you have this new space to build a new reality. And a lot of this can look like that inner work that we do, right? The subconscious rewiring that I talk about on a lot of these episodes. It can look like reprogramming your mind to be that new version of you, right? Instead of being the person who gets angry at her partner often, or snips at her partner often, or makes petty remarks at her partner, we have to clear out those behaviors. We have to clear out what causes you to become that person and install new ways of being, become a new version of you, rebuild in order to attract that level of relationship that you're desiring, that level of wealth, whatever it might be. I was recently at this biohacking event, and there was a panel of 3 very, very successful business people talking about money. And the conversation was about business and money, essentially, because it was mostly entrepreneurs there. And one of them, he was one of the early investors in a really large tech company. I believe he's a billionaire now. What he talked about was, he said, everything is energy. And if you don't do the inner work in order to build the business that you want, to build the wealth that you want, you are going to sabotage it. These were his words. And I'm like, that's very on brand for me, because it's true. If you don't become that version of yourself that you need to be, those old patterns are constantly going to be fighting for their life and sabotaging who you want to be. That imposter syndrome will keep coming up. Those old fears, that self-doubt will keep coming up. The jealousy, the triggers, those things are going to keep coming up until you deal with them. And if you want help with dealing with those and overcoming those limited ways of being and installing the programming to be your most successful self, send me a message on Instagram with the word podcast in it. My Instagram is @alignmentwithjen, and I'll send you a 5-minute video about my program where I guide you through that process. It is exceptional. You will become a completely different version of you on the other side. So that's essentially what the rebuilding is about. It is about becoming the version of you that can hold what it is that you want. Then stage 5 is really about becoming that person and being able to maintain it, being able to hold it. Because what we want to manifest is not a one and done, right? It's not like, okay, I got the relationship, I'm good, I don't need to work on it. I got the money, I'm good, I don't need to work on it. I got the health, I'm good, I don't need to work on it. That is not true. That's not how reality is. We have to be able to hold the things that we want to manifest as well, right? Maybe I lose a bunch of weight, but I don't know how to maintain that weight loss, right? I don't know how to care for my body, exercise. I'm not going to have the health that I want to have. Maybe I make a bunch of money, right? And then I don't know how to maintain that wealth. I'm not the kind of person, my consciousness is not at the level to hold that wealth. So what is going to happen is I will probably lose those things. And so we need to become that version. And that happens through our inner work, through our ability to hold that next level. I don't believe that people struggle to manifest what they want because they don't know what they want. I believe that people struggle to manifest what they want because they keep moving back and forth between the person who can hold it and the person who can't, the old self and the new self, because we become so addicted to being that old version of ourself that it can be very, very difficult for us if we're trying to create something new from that old identity. Our identity, who we are being, is that strongest driving force in our reality. We will do anything, sometimes even go against our morals, in order to align with the identity that we want to be. And what your identity is it is anything you follow up with I am. It's who on a deep level you believe that you are. If you follow up I am with I am bad with money, you will continue to play that out in your reality. If you follow it up with I am a money magnet, you will keep playing that out in your reality. The truth is you have to believe it on a deep subconscious level because you cannot outwork, you cannot outperform your subconscious mind. It is too powerful, it is too fast. So in order to hold those manifestations, you truly have to become that new version of yourself. So what that looks like is thoughts, emotions, and actions aligning with who you want to be, living in integrity with that person. I'll recap those stages again. So first, there's the spark. It's the awareness that comes of that idea that you want to manifest. Honestly, most people never get past this. Most people flirt with the idea. They never make a formal decision to actually manifest what they want. That would take them to step 2, and that's the call. It's picking up the phone. It's saying, I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to make a new reality for myself. Most people are too afraid to do that. Number 3 is the clearing. It's when you answer that call, there's going to be a release of the things that no longer serve you. So that might look like old patterns coming up with a vengeance. It might look like relationships ending, jobs ending, and you have to move through that and recognize, you know what? I am excited that this is happening because I know something is better for me that is happening on the other side. Number 4 is the rebuilding. It's recognizing, who do I want to be and how am I going to start cultivating that? And stage 5 is really becoming that woman and holding that manifestation. It's learning to be that person over the long term. And I will say, in order for stage 5 to be successful, you have to have support. You can't do this in isolation. It's very, very, very hard to change our lives in isolation. If you look at the most successful people in the world, the most successful people in sports, in business, in finance, in government, they all have support. They have coaches, they have consultants, they have advisors, right? Because we don't do this well in isolation. We are not meant to change and create our lives in isolation. And so having a community, having guidance, and if that's something that you want to help you through this process, to help you do that inner work, to help you become that version of you, send me a message on Instagram with the word podcast, and I'll send you a 5-minute video about my program where I guide you through this. My Instagram is @alignmentwithjen. So I hope you have loved this episode. I hope it's given you some clarity. Leave me comments. Let me know what questions you have, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.